Oh, look, more evidence of the BBC not being able to handle money. That's good. It makes the licence fee sound like an excellent way to fund a media organisation, doesn't it? Cost of covering King's coronation and late Queen's funeral led to BBC programme cull. So this has all come about from Michaela Strachan doing an interview, and she was saying that the BBC covering the King's coronation and that was the reason why they had to cut back on making Autumn Watch, which I said was probably quite a cheap programme to make, but I've been contacted by a few people in the business who were saying it actually wasn't that cheap to make. So fair enough. I don't work in telly. I don't know. But what I do know is the King's coronation coverage was solely produced by the BBC. They were responsible for the cameras and the production and everything. And those pictures went out around the world. Now, those pictures didn't go out around the world for free. So whilst I accept that the King's coronation setup would have cost the BBC millions, if not tens of millions to put together, don't you remember seeing all the headlines just before it about the furore from other broadcasters, especially in the UK, with the BBC's cost to provide that feed to them? They wanted to be able to show it on their social media, or other news channels wanted to be able to show the coverage, and the BBC were charging big money, which we don't know the full figures, but they're charging big money for it. Now, they didn't just sell that live feed to UK broadcasters. That was the sole coverage feed that went out around the world. And that didn't go out around the world for free, because guess who produced the coverage for that? Was it the BBC that you pay your licence fee to, or was it BBC Studios, which was, I think it was BBC Productions actually, but it was a private BBC company, a commercial BBC company that produced it so that they could sell that footage and that feed all around the world. So yeah, it might have cost them millions or tens of millions to set that all up. How much did that actually bring in income? And we'll never know. We'll never know, because I could file a Freedom of Information request for that, but they won't answer it because they'll use some excuse like letting you know the numbers that we charge could affect the third-party broadcaster's ability to create profit or something in the future. They always have a get-out clause on the FOI requests. So we don't get the true story here, but the BBC not managing money properly, it's not exactly breaking news, is it? So Michaela Strachan said, "It's really sad, but when you think that budgets are getting smaller, the choice was either to strip the budget over all programmes or strip one of the programmes, and I think that was the best decision. I would rather keep Springwatch at the heart of the watches and keep the budget. Of course, I'd rather we had all three, but if you're faced with that decision, let's be honest, we have a cost of living crisis. People aren't buying their TV licences. We've had a very expensive coronation and a very expensive Queen's funeral, which has cost the BBC a lot of money." Well, I'm not sure how much the cost of living crisis is affecting the BBC. It is still getting 3.7 billion quid a year. That's set to go up next year. So, they just can't seem to manage money. You know, they have all this extra stuff that's not required, like the World Service to service those 3 listeners. If you have a look at BBC News, they have it for pretty much every country in the world, in every language in those countries. And they're not for British people in Britain to read or to watch. That is for those foreign countries that don't pay anything towards the BBC. They have pidgin. BBC News is in pidgin English, for instance, which means they employ at least 2, because what if one's on holiday, native pidgin English speakers to translate British news stories into pidgin English and to come up with stories for that country where pidgin English is the national language. But they don't pay anything towards it. Why? How much money could the BBC save if they dumped all of that nonsense? It makes no sense, does it? I mean, they've changed BBC News. That's been changed a lot. And the reason they've done it is so it can be commercial in other markets. That's why they've done it. They're changing the radio to try and make cost cuts. They're getting loads of pushback and that, and they're starting to backtrack on it. What can they do to appease people? Around 70,000 people a month at the minute are cancelling their TV licence fees. That's going to start to hit them pretty soon if that continues, isn't it? It must. So, I don't know. The BBC need to handle money better. But do you know the best way to learn to handle money? to make your own money. You know, ITV, if they want to cut a show, whatever, that's their choice. We don't care. We're not stakeholders in that. We don't have to pay anything to ITV to watch it. ITV make all their money commercially. And interestingly enough, I only found out recently, they make about the same money as the BBC does from licence fees. Yeah, they do that by showing adverts and selling shows. Why can't the BBC just do that? So I will file a Freedom of Information request to try and find out how much the BBC spent producing the coronation coverage and how much income was brought in by selling the rights to the coronation coverage. But don't hold your breath on me getting an answer for that. If you want to file your own as well, you know where to do it. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because that way, hopefully I'll see you in another video again soon when I ta-da.